Daniel, number 5. Daniel in the lion's den.
King Darius was the new ruler of Babylon. To help him rule the kingdom, he chose 120 governors, and over these governors he appointed 3 presidents. Because Daniel had such an excellent spirit, the king made Daniel the top president. The governors and the other 2 presidents were jealous of Daniel. They watched him carefully. They wanted to catch him doing something wrong so they could report him to the king. As hard as they tried, they could not find anything to report. Finally, they decided,
"The only way we can find fault with him is in the way he obeys the laws of his God."
When the princes and the presidents had decided on a way to trap Daniel, they went to the king.
"King Darius, may you live forever,"
they said.
"All the presidents, princes, governors, counselors, and captains have met and decided on a law you should make. For the next 30 days have every person make his request only to you. Anyone who makes a request of any god or man other than you, O king, shall be thrown into the lion's den. Make this law so it cannot be changed."
Daniel had not helped plan this new law. He was not even with the group that stood before the king, but the king did not realize this. He liked being the most important person in the entire kingdom, and so he signed the law. Then it was announced among all the people. Daniel heard about the law, but he did not obey it. Just as before, he knelt 3 times every day and prayed by his window open toward Jerusalem. Here the princes and presidents found him on his knees praying and thanking God. At last they had a way to get rid of Daniel. Quickly they hurried to the king and asked him, "Have you not signed a decree that for 30 days every person who asks a request of any god or man other than you will be thrown into the lion's den?"
"That's right," the king answered, "and that law cannot be changed."
Then the nobles told the king,
"That Daniel, who was captured out of Judah, is not loyal to you, O king. He has not obeyed your decree. 3 times a day he prays to his God."
How disturbed the king was! Now he was very sorry he had listened to the nobles and made such a law. All day he tried to find some way to save Daniel. All day he studied the laws of his country. He hoped to find some way that he could release Daniel. When the sun went down, the nobles hurried to the palace and reminded the king that his new law had to be obeyed. Darius knew now that he could not save Daniel. He ordered that Daniel be thrown into the lion's den. As Daniel was taken and thrown down with the lions, the king called out,
"Daniel, the God you serve so faithfully will surely save you from the lions."
A stone was placed over the mouth of the den. The king put his seal on the stone with his signet ring and with the signet rings of his noblemen, so no one would dare move it without his permission. With a heavy heart, the king returned to his palace. He refused to eat any food or listen to music. King Darius was so troubled that he could not sleep all night long. He kept thinking about Daniel. At the first light of dawn, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den. In a troubled, anxious voice he called out,
"O Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions?"
The king listened. From deep within the pit he heard Daniel answer,
"O king, live forever. My God has sent his angel. The angel shut the lions' mouths, and they did not harm me. God knew I had done no wrong."
How glad the king was! He called his servants to pull Daniel out. The king commanded that those who had plotted against Daniel be thrown into the den. When Darius returned to his palace, he wrote letters to the people of every nation. He said,
"Peace with you. I make a decree that in every part of my kingdom men shall fear Daniel's God. He is the living God, steadfast forever. His kingdom shall never be destroyed, and his rule shall not end. By his power he has delivered Daniel from the lions."
From that time on, Daniel was treated well by the kings of Babylon. There are many things we can learn from this lesson. I've thought of 3. Maybe you can think of more. First, Daniel was under intense scrutiny by the other nobles, yet they could find nothing to accuse him of. What would be found if you were under that kind of scrutiny? Make sure your life glorifies God. Second, Daniel had the courage to pray in spite of the king's new law because he clearly understood that God is really in control. Daniel knew that the king did not have the right to make a law that changed the way he worshiped God. Third, it is interesting to note the many similarities between the story of Daniel in the lion's den and Jesus the Messiah. Both men were without fault, faithful to God, and known for prayer. Both were sentenced to death because of the jealousy of others. Both men were put into a room that was meant to be their tomb with a stone over the opening. Both came out victoriously and glorified God. Do you know Jesus the Messiah? Have you accepted him as your Savior? Jesus, the Son of Man, came to save people just like you and me.